Well, hey, welcome to the X podcast here for episode 63, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it is a brand new year, and I got my friends with me. How are we doing?
Hey, hello.
We
Doing
got
good.
Jesse. How
Hello.
are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We got Zach.
Yep.
And we got Jessica Castles, who, I don't know, she is taking actually over the podcast game
Yeah.
because not as we film this podcast, you have filmed and are getting ready to film Inspired Podcast
Yep.
for the women of the house. And there's a lot of buzz about it. It's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
What are you talking about today in your podcast?
Oh, in our podcast, the one that's dropping today, we talk about New Year's resolutions. Are they dumb? Are they cool? Or, it's up for debate.
Nice. I didn't think there was a debate. I just thought they were all awesome.
Nope.
But you know what?
There's definitely a debate.
Okay,
There-
is
yeah.
there a debate? Okay,
I think so.
Maybe we can talk about that some today.
They opened my eyes up to it a little bit. Because normally I'm with you, like goals. But I think there's a debate.
Yeah, no, I think I've made a hard switch over the last couple of years.
Let's talk about it today. Okay, how's Christmas? This is our first time back since Christmas, New Year's. Was it good? You probably did a lot of traveling, knowing
Oh.
you.
Nope. Hard pass.
We're talking about this over lunch,
Yeah.
how our weeks and our times so different. So, and a dream week for you is what?
Staying home, not leaving the house, sweatpants all the time.
Yeah.
Movies, video games.
You are a little excited about a video game that just came out,
Yes, sir.
Halo Eternal.
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
It's so
That
close.
Wow.
sounded good,
It's
though.
so
I
close.
mean,
That
that was
is
a
so
nice
far
try.
away.
Does your heart hurt, Pastor Jesse?
Yeah.
Is it
It's
hurting
that
right now?
scene in The Office where Jim is teasing Dwight about making fun of, like, oh, this guy Dumbledore Calrissian
Yes.
has to return the ring from Mordor.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
This is-
That
that's
really,
just
that really
wrong.
is.
Yeah.
It is really wrong.
Well, I just
Halo
beat it on
Infinite.
heroic,
Yes.
legendary, and famous as far as the levels. Zach,
Yes.
how was
Just move on.
Just move on. Yeah, we got to move on.
Not
how was
even.
how was your Christmas, your New Year's? We just got back from Atlanta at 1 a.m. last night.
Yes, Passion Conference 2022.
You took like 30, no, I don't know,
Wasn't
20
quite-
something
Yeah, it wasn't quite that many.
young
I thought it was
adults
40.
Passion Conference
40,
in
yeah,
Atlanta.
40, yes.
And yesterday I got to show you, take
Atlanta.
you around the city of Atlanta. You said it was like being on one of those.
Yeah, like a National Geographic, like wild experiences. Have you ever watched those? You have the English accent comes on, and it's like, oh, it's a wild Pastor Russ in his native environment
I
in the
don't-
city in Atlanta.
I don't know about that.
Oh, if you can picture, if you're listening, him just like, oh, this coffee shop is where this happened, and then this coffee shop is where
Okay,
this happened,
for
and then this taco place
Yeah,
is
I
really
can
good, but
see
then
that.
taco place is even better. But let me tell you about these breakfast tacos.
Can we go
over
ahead,
here.
Maria, and cut his mic? We
No.
but last
Christmas
night
was great though.
But it was amazing. Christmas?
Yeah,
Even
Christmas
more
was good.
importantly,
Yeah.
Atlanta was great for you.
Yes.
And last night,
Yeah.
I just want to say this on record.
No.
Zach had his first. I wasn't going to talk about your Jennifer Lopez
I know,
suitcase.
I was waiting
Um,
for that.
Zach had his first official seafood dinner.
It
What?
was really good.
It was amazing. And you had red fish?
Red fish, yes, and like a smoked
Wait, why have you not eaten seafood prior
Uh,
to
okay.
age
32.
32?
Trust me, I've tried this intervention.
So, in my defense, born and raised in Ohio, Midwest, corn, cows, beef.
There's such
like-
thing as
That's all- that's all we
fish,
have
though, here.
What?
There are such thing as fishies
Yeah,
here in Ohio
I
that
know
you can
there's-
buy
I know
for
there's-
cooking.
Yeah, I know, but we just never ate fish growing up. I'm the kid that when you go
You
on,
eating fish sticks?
when you go, no, fish sticks are so gross. There's actually a legendary story in my family.
Oh, God.
This
Legendary.
meal. My mom was, so my mom homeschooled us, was kind of real big into family things, and there was this thing back in the day called once a month cooking. And that was where you like got together and
Once the monks go cooking.
once a month cooking. It's where you
Oh, yeah,
would
yeah,
get all
yeah.
together. You remember that?
Yeah,
like where you would
and
like
you do freezer bags.
Yeah, freezer
and then
bags.
you just do it one time every month, and then you've got your
whole month.
Well, that's why you never
Sometimes.
see food.
So
you
no,
can't have
so one meal,
refrozen fish. and
one meal that she made. It was okay.
crock
okay.
pot fish.
It was it was instant mashed potatoes.
Oh, dear God.
It was the frozen tilapia that you can get.
Oh, okay.
And you put the tilapia into the instant mashed potatoes with spinach.
Yeah.
And you put it like in an aluminum pan. And you heated that up and that was your meal.
Oh,
so
okay.
she did this once a month thing, and it was the last meal of the month. So it had been sitting in the freezer for a month, and she makes it. And I come home from football practice, and it had been sitting out on the stove for like an hour after my siblings had already had to eat it. And I took one look at that dish, and I said, I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to go to bed hungry. This is after football practice, and I'm like hungry football player. And my mom said, yeah, it was pretty gross. And she threw it away. And we just never really had fish.
That story was legendary.
Yeah.
It was. It'd be all my. If you ask all my
I think
siblings
you should make
to
it into
this
a
day,
movie.
Well,
It
who
was
would you
the-
now?
Has to play you in the movie.
myself, obviously.
Yeah. Now, Jess, you'll back me up on this though, because you, like me, are from the South. I will say, in your defense, it is a little tough to find Mexican food and seafood that is quite
Yeah.
as great in the heartland,
Yeah.
Midland.
Well,
Midwest.
yeah. I mean, like my parents were in town this Christmas, and we went to a place, and she like blurts out, "Yeah, I'll have some chips and queso," and Trey was like, "Remember, you're in Ohio,"
Right. Right.
because she lives in Austin, Texas. So I mean, like in the heart of Texas, it's great Mexican food, but yeah, it's not.
No.
It's not the same as.
That's why he kept saying, well, you're all about tacos in Atlanta. It's like, because I don't think you've ever had, really, really good tacos. So I wanted you to experience it. It's like, so over Christmas break, one of my favorite memories is, so my family lives in Greenville, and a couple hours away is Charleston. And so we've started this new little tradition of seafood by the beach. Charleston, it was 75 degrees, December
Oh,
28th. It's crazy. But anyways, so Jess, good New Year's, good Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, we we're transplants from Texas, so the nice thing is our family comes to us, which is great. I mean, like we don't have to travel. We traveled the first year we lived here, and that was a nightmare. I mean, we had like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we traveled back on Christmas Day, and we're like, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So they come to us. So Trey's parents come in over Christmas, and then my parents come in over New Year's. So we had a house full for about 2 weeks.
Nice.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Y'all had some times where you escaped away, just you and Trey for some.
Yeah, once
Yeah.
on New Year's Eve, so that was nice.
So let's talk about New Year's. I actually have a topic, a thought I want to bounce by you guys, see what you think, and I want us to lean into. But it kind of piggybacks off of New Year's, this whole idea of New Year's resolutions. What does it look like to begin a new year? I watched some reel on Instagram. There was actually really meaningful. A guy just wrote a book, and he read an excerpt from the book that was actually really moving about how we can minimize it, but there is something really special about the turning of a calendar, the turning of time, and new natural lending to new beginnings. Natural lendings to, you can obviously change whenever you want to. You can obviously, you shouldn't wait till tomorrow to do something important. But there can be something beautiful about new beginnings, about new chapters, and why not lean into it. But when it comes to New Year's resolutions, all that kind of stuff, so are you New Year's resolutions people? It sounds like there's been kind of a shift. A couple of you might have been, but then you changed. Tell me about that. Or what about you?
Yeah, I'm not.
No?
No.
Do you like New Year's at all?
I mean, it's fine.
It's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
It's fun. When was the last time you watched the ball drop?
Oh, I don't remember.
Well, it
It's
just
been a
changes when you
while.
have little kids.
Yeah, it really does. I'd love to blame it on that too, but
It's actually not them, it's me.
It's been longer than since my kids have existed. Yeah, I'm not a huge New Year's person. I'm not a New Year's resolution. I actually didn't write any this year. Like, I don't know. I guess my thinking is more like I could have a goal or like aspire to do something in June the same way I can in January. And for me, I guess the fact that now it's 22 instead of 21 doesn't motivate me to suddenly think of goals, if that makes sense. Like, I definitely have ambition and goals. I guess I don't orient them around the new year, I guess.
Okay. What about you?
I think there is something powerful intrinsically when it comes to turning the page. I think that the way our society marks time, a new year symbolizes that moment for a lot of people where you can kind of say, hey, the old is gone and the new has come. And I think there can be something powerful that comes from that. I think what's really hard, though, is we have a tendency to put all of our eggs kind of in this basket. Like, this is going to be my year, and this is going to be the year that, like, I'm going to conquer the world, and this is going to be the year that I lose 150 pounds and pay off $1 million in debt, and finally go on the 6 vacations I've said I'm going to go on this year, and do all those things. And I think we always set off with these grand ambitions, but for me, it's like one of those things where it seems like sometimes we set ourselves up for failure because we often set these really high goals, but we don't actually do anything to actually prepare ourselves to actually move towards the goals, if that makes sense.
But not to devil's advocate already, but because I agree with you, but is the problem setting the goals, or is it what you just said? Is the problem you have a beautiful new opportunity of the turning of a calendar to set goals, or is the problem kind of what it seems like you allude to? It's not the setting of goals. It's I've set too many goals, or I've set too large goals, or I've set goals without an actual plan.
I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's good to have vision. It's good to have vision for like, hey, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is where I want to go. And I think a new year offers that opportunity for you to say, okay, what is the vision for the next year of my life, and what does that look like, and where am I going? If people aren't doing that, if you're not doing that, then you're never going to go anywhere. If you can't see where you're going, so I think it's a good time for that. And I think that's the value of what a new year is from. So there's a lot to go from setting the goal and seeing the goal to actually seeing it accomplished. That trips a lot of people up.
All right. Well,
I was just tired of failing at my own goals, so I just stopped setting them.
That's honest. That's good.
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
I mean, a lot of it comes with maturity and the expectation from the goal, or like, you know, in my earlier years, setting them too high, doing too much, too many goals, having too many goals. And I think over time, I've learned to kind of just settle in my own self. Because I am very motivated, and like I am an achiever, and I like crossing things off a to-do list. Like I love all that, but I think realistically, it was almost like I needed to find a middle. Like it was either, no, I'm not doing any goals, or I'm doing 75 of them. I'm doing all of them. And I really wanted to get to the center to where I could like have enough grace for myself when I did fail, but also have the right amount of like motivation to do a goal, or, you know.
Yeah,
I think it's also, I'm tired by the new year. I mean, after all the Christmas celebration, I'm like, I don't want to think about that right now.
Yeah. What about you? I mean, you're a very goal-oriented, achieving person.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it a lot on here, so I don't want to recap boring about this, listen to this podcast for a while. But I think I also probably think it's important to note that of the 4 people at this table, 3 are threes.
I know.
Which is really
I was going to mention that. I'm strongly outnumbered here.
Right. But it's interesting because kind of what it seems like you two are leaning towards is not a very, if you were to stereotype it, 3 answer.
Yeah.
Well, I think I balance out because my husband's a 1, and he is not about the setting of goals.
Right.
And so I think being around him long enough, I'm like, oh, that makes sense why you don't.
Yeah. I think for me, early in life, I had this tradition in middle school and high school. Me and my buddy Ray, we would go to Panera at the mall every single New Year's, and we would write out all of our resolutions. And I'd write out about 40. I mean, it was everything from lose weight to write a book to go skydiving it was like a combination of like wishful
thinking. It's like basically
thinking.
like a bucket list.
Yeah, it was like a bucket list. And of course, I would cross off 2 or 3 every year, but I didn't care. I loved it. So I think as I matured, I was like, okay, there's what kind of goals do I set? If I'm going to set actual goals, achievable goals, what's the whole SMART acronym? Specific, accurate, measurable, whatever.
That's not how you spell smart.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't remember what they all were, but it was stuff like that. Stuff like that. 3. But it was stuff like that. But and then you learn as you get older, especially like in like certain leadership roles. If you read like leadership books, like you learn like different more wise approaches to actually setting goals, coming up with a plan for a goal, and bringing in accountability for a goal to actually achieve them. And then one of the things actually last year that was helpful. So anyway, say all that to say, over the last like 7 to 8 years, what I've done is I've tried to say, kind because I think maybe maybe there's a way to put it if you're not a goal person. I think even if you don't have goals in the moment, I think vision's always important.
Yeah.
Without vision, we perish.
Yeah.
So how that fleshes out into goals or not goals, depending on the person's season of life, depending on their personality, that's between them and God if they have a faith or whatever. But I think we can't argue that in every season, vision is important for every human being.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be something drawing us into the future. There's got to be some sort of. I think there should be some large God-given vision that's drawing us in and helping us become that we're moving towards. You know, like Paul, I'm pressing forward to the. So I think that. So for me, over the last 7 or 8 years, what I've enjoyed doing, and part of this is my personality type, is I've loved asking God like for a theme for the year. Like, what's the theme for the year? I love asking for a verse for the year. This sounds very spiritual if you're listening, not from faith context, but a word for the year. Sometimes I feel like, whether it's through somebody else or through me, I feel like God will kind of give me like a prophetic, like here's kind of like what you're moving towards. Here's kind of a promise for the year. And then off of that, I'll have a few, this is me trying to mature. I'll have a few, like 3 or 4 big God-sized goals, and I'll have 3 or 4 big God-sized prayers. Like, God, here are the things that with your help I want to try to move towards, and then here are the things that only you can do. I'm asking you to do. And so that's helped. And then another thing that's helped is, in our context as a church, we slice up our year into 3 seasons. And so there's a lot of data out right now, like secular research, that actually shows that it's way more effective to have, like now there's a 100-day journal. And there's all these different journals that are around 90 to 100 to 120 days, and it's because all the data is showing that it's easier for human beings to set goals in 12 to 13-week increments.
It's like a season.
It's like a season. And so last year, I set, like I had my kind of big template year, and then I had season 1. Here are my 3 big goals in ministry and life. And I actually did really, really well. And then I did horrible in season 2 and season 3. So I don't know. Those are just some things I'm learning. But it is funny because this year, I was actually sharing with you when we were at Pond City yesterday in Atlanta. You're asking me, and I said, and I mentioned this Sunday when I was speaking, that this was a rare year for me, where as I was getting ready for it, I just felt like, we do 21 days every year as a church community where we fast and we pray, and I felt like I needed to put on pause all of my thoughts. I just had a lot of, I felt like mental clutter and even just soul clutter, and I was like, I have all these thoughts of things I could try to accomplish, but I want to hear spiritually, internally, what does my focus need to be?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, this may sound really weird, but I even felt like this year, I have a couple specific goals, but this is a year where I actually have more human goals of, as a human being, how I want to grow. As a human being, some human goals of I don't know, soul and disciplines and just some areas I want to. I just want to grow as a person.
Yeah. I think you make a really interesting point about vision. I forget where it was. It might have been the John Mark Comer book we were talking about a couple weeks ago. I don't know where it was, but I was reading that the ability that humans have to see things in our minds that aren't reality, and to picture what could be, that's the thing that sets us apart from other creatures in God's creation or other things in the world. And I just think there's something really powerful about that ability that we have.
Right.
And I think a lot of times, like I know for me in my life where I felt like stuck, and so maybe you're listening and you feel like, hey, I'm coming into 2022 and 2021 was a year and I just kind of feel stuck and I don't really know the way forward. I think taking some time to just give yourself some space and time maybe to start the year and think about what could be.
Right.
Like what is not present in my life or in my reality that I can imagine or I can see that I want to step forward into.
Yeah.
And that can begin to really help shape vision and help shape kind of what you're stepping into. I know I went through a season actually in the middle of 2021 where I was kind of in that place where I felt stuck and I was like, felt like everywhere I went, I was hitting a wall and I wasn't feeling satisfied with what I was doing in my life and where I was going. And I took actually a whole week. I set aside time to just stop everything.
Vision Quest.
Vision Quest, as the staff jokingly likes to call it. But it was really intentional time for me to just stop and say, what what do I want my life to look like? Yeah. And it was out of that week and asking myself that question, and I just let my brain just go and imagine and think, okay, where do I see myself, where do I feel like God is using me? Or where do I feel like my life has value and meaning? What are the things that I do, whether it's parenting Charlie and Lily and Oakley or being a husband to Rebecca or whatever it is, where do I find my sense of joy and my satisfaction? And when I begin to picture those things and imagine what that could be or what I want that to look like, that begin to shape my perspective in terms of where I need to be heading towards. So.
What I think is interesting about this whole conversation, and this is probably where I'm maybe outnumbered, is I think like the motivation behind goals for people is different.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
especially
Big.
for
That's a good point.
threes, it's very centered on ambition.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to
Yeah.
I aspire to do this. And I get maybe I'm weird, probably the weird one at this table, but when I think of a goal, it really isn't motivated by I want to aspire to this or that or whatever, or achieve or whatever. It's really about sensing like something in myself that I need or is like a felt need to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I
it's
like
not
that.
like, man, I want to see this. No, it's okay. For the last 12 months, I've been scrounging together pennies to buy lunch. You
Yeah.
know, I need to change the way I'm managing my finances. So I guess, like for me, when I think of New Year's, I think about like what are some changes that I need to make in myself so that I stop butting my head up against the same walls over and over again. It's kind of that the saying of like when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change
Yeah.
is when you know that things need to happen. And so I guess maybe that's where I'm different, where it's not really New Year's that does this for me. I'll feel that in, like I said, August. Like, okay, I need to make a change here. So let me strategically think about how to make that change.
Ambition is not the explosion that causes you to change. Pain is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's I want to talk about that. I want to talk about change. That's really where I want to go. And so I'm going to bounce the first question to you, because there's whether it's January 1st or June 1st. Of course, there's always the truth is, no matter what we feel about New Year's resolutions, a lot of what people are actually saying at the beginning of the new year is there's something in my life I need to change.
Yeah.
All of us, whether it's January 1st or June 1st, I imagine have things that are like, man, I have tried for so long to shift this in my life or to overcome this or to get better at this. But the truth is, the joke is there for a reason that, January 1st is the best day of the year for gyms because everybody gets a membership. And then the joke is true. By February, people aren't there.
Yeah.
There is something about us, isn't there, that it's hard to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that, Jessica? Why is it so hard for us? Why do we all seem to have these things in life or these areas of life where it's just no matter what we do, it's just so hard to change?
I don't know. I feel like, habits are, science has talked about how habits, ingrain a pathway of neurons that you go in one direction. If you have a habit, if you form a habit over time of something, your brain automatically runs that way
Right.
Yeah.
until it gets rerouted
Right.
to a new rhythm, a new habit, a new pattern. So I think
Yeah.
it's hard to undo some of the habits that we have. But I think change is just hard in general. I'm just not a change person. Like when I met Trey, he loves change. He like welcomes change with open arms. And I never understood that.
He's good at it.
He's so good at it. And I think, over time I've gotten better at it, but change is hard. And I think it's because it actually puts you through a little bit of suffering. Personal suffering. I'm not talking about like global type suffering, but like it hurts a little bit. Like you talked
Yeah.
about pain. And I think as human beings, we do everything in our power to
avoid.
stay away from
That's good.
suffering and pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to take the easy route, or we're going to take the route that's less painful in order to make a change. But like what you were talking about is like the motivation aspect. I really think that change has 3 components to it, if you could break it down. And I really think it starts with a decision. You have to make it a decision. Change is not going to happen. Change is most likely not going to happen on your, just because, unless
Yeah.
change happens to you for you to make a change, it has to be a decision.
Yeah.
And I think another one is motivation to get that. Or like we all have different reasons for a motivation, but I think that the motivation in order to make a permanent change has to be sustainable. I feel like I've gone through so many times in my life where I've made a change, but my motivation was surface
Yeah.
or thin or didn't really have any legs.
Can you give
or
me an example?
Waking up early. I feel like I've always wanted to wake up early, and I am a morning person in that it doesn't take me a long time to wake up. But I mean, through the years of having kids, I mean, I had littles for 10 years in a row, and where I was either breastfeeding or pregnant, or I mean, like they wake up at the butt crack of dawn or whatever, and I always wanted to have a rhythm of waking up early, and I just never could. And I think the third part of the change is grace for yourself when you do fail.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
that's good.
so many times I just wanted to wake up early just because I almost just wanted to be a person that said I wake up early.
Yeah.
That wasn't strong enough and it wasn't
Yeah.
sustainable enough.
Yeah.
But when I started making those like little increments of change, which that's another thing, is like change happens over a long period of time.
Yeah.
It is not like immediate.
Yeah.
But for waking up early, for me, I found the motivation that kept me waking up early. And that was, I mean, for me personally, to have my own space of quietness, because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and for 10 years, there was always someone by my side, and I talked to kids all day long. And it was almost like I craved the time by myself that would actually give me the sanity to get me through the rest of the day. And so when I hit my breaking point and my threshold point of like, this is a need for me now, then I had the motivation to say like, I'm waking up early because
So
that's
your
my time.
motivation was
Well, I think in the long
the
run,
one that helped, the one that actually stuck.
time alone.
Time alone.
But that just seems it's interesting because I never used to need time alone. I felt like I didn't need time alone until I actually got time alone. I was like, oh, that's what that feels like, and that's how recharged I am from that. So that became my motivation. But I think another thing in my motivation was sustainability. Like if I want to, in the long run, be a person who wakes up early in order to do whatever I want to do in that time, then I have to start somewhere, because I
Yeah.
knew it wasn't just going to be like going from I wake up when my kids first cry to, oh, now I just like wake up at 5:45. Why can't you do that? Like, it wasn't like that. So I knew the sustainable option was, what do I have to do in little increments to get me to the 5:45?
So what were some practical things you did?
I used to set my alarm instead of setting it at 5:45 or, whatever time, because I would just snooze it because
You
I'm
hit
like,
snooze.
impossible. Then I would just set it like 10 minutes ahead of when my kids woke up, because I knew that they were pretty like on the dot, like when they woke up. And so I would set it 10 minutes before. And so for a long time, maybe weeks, I wouldn't get out of bed, but I would just be conscious because you know how bad it is. Like when you wake up to
Yeah.
a screaming baby, you're just like, just sets the tone for your day. You're like, I'm going to tear everybody to pieces. So I used to just
They're not
set
very
it 10 minutes ahead so I could at least open my eyes and be conscious and awake. And then over time, I would move it back 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
So you started with
That's good.
realistic goals.
Yeah.
You gave yourself grace. One of the practical questions, because there's data out now that shows, you've always heard 21 days to form a habit.
Yeah.
So the most recent research shows that it takes 21 days to even begin a habit, and it takes 90 days to seal a habit in your mind. Did you notice anything? I'm just curious. Did you notice anything around that?
I mean, it's definitely taken a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, because now you just don't believe it at the very beginning. Like, because I never believe, like, because it would be a year and I'm still struggling to wake up early. And I'm like, most people would just throw in the towel at that point.
Yeah.
But I was determined on the other side. I'm
You're
like,
persistent. You're resilient.
I'm just gonna, like, this is, I know this will be a key factor into the way that I organize the rest of my day, the way I get through my days. And so decided to be persistent with it. And really now it's easy. But I was so mad at people that told me that before. I'm like, shut up. It's not easy. You don't even know. Like you're just like one of those morning people. You just wake up and you're happy. But really, now that I've done it for probably 2.5, 3 years, I'm like, yeah, it's not hard now.
Yeah.
But
And you
I would
probably
say
can't
like
imagine
over
your life
time.
before it.
Yeah.
What about you?
Specifically, what changes I've
So
made? Or what?
why is it so hard to change? And also, I want to hear like, is there an area of your life that you've had to practically put some things in place to bring lasting change? Was there an area of your life that was hard to change for a while? You attacked. What did you learn in the process?
Yeah, I guess first, change is difficult, I think, just because anytime you have to change what you regularly do, it requires an extra level of, I think, a couple things. One, just it's kind of a joke with my friends every time I say self-awareness. It's like a thing. But I think it takes a certain amount of self-awareness to see the areas that, okay, this has become an issue that I need to deal with, whether it's a physical issue with, habits of the way I eat, staying up too late, whatever, or even like an emotional habit, of like,
That's good.
I am not processing my feelings in a healthy way. And to be able to stop and first identify that that's a problem point.
What would be an example of that?
Well, I'll say the example from my life. If we go back, let's say 10 years.
We don't often think in terms of emotional habits.
Right. And I think they're the hardest to notice because so often
point.
you're not in control of your emotion. Your emotion happens to you. And so it doesn't seem like something that, do I need to think about the way I handle this? No, it just happens.
Right.
When this happens,
Well,
I
and
feel
we
sad.
also live in a culture that coddles to our unhealthy emotions.
Correct.
Whatever you feel it.
Feel it.
Feel it.
Stand
it's
on
fine.
it.
It's fine.
Post it and celebrate it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's...
Are you guys like me?
I am.
Okay.
What does that even mean? Nobody
don't
knows. I think there's a weird tension, and it's been, and I'll get back to the change, but like there's been this weird swing in the last couple of decades, it seems, of like emotions, ignore them, especially like to men, I think especially like
Yeah.
be a man,
Suppress.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And then there's been this drastic pendulum swing to the other side of, name every feeling, validate every feeling. And I think that...
And let the feelings lead you.
And, for sure. And I think there's healthy is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Where you have to be able to acknowledge and say the things that you're feeling. This is the emotion I'm having right now. This is what's causing the emotion I'm having. Is there something underrooted where, I'm not actually upset that the person in front of me just cut me off or they're driving too slow. It's actually that thing that just happened, with my spouse that's really motivating this. And having the emotional intelligence to identify that, but also saying, okay, but that doesn't have the final say. I'm not going to allow that to ruin my entire day. I'm not going to allow that to hinder the next encounter with the person I have. So whatever. Anyway, it's a little bit about my story. I probably have dealt with some form of depression my entire adult life and wasn't aware of it until about 3 years ago. And so speaking to like identifying a change in an area, your circumstances can allow you they can afford you a better window into who you are and how you're affecting other people. So when I was single, depression for me often comes out in the form of anger, which seems weird because I'm a pretty quiet and laid-back person. But that it would manifest itself in anger. And when I was single, lived in my parents' basement, I could be angry, nobody would know. But then when you get married, suddenly now there's another person here. And all of a sudden that anger is getting pointed at them. Okay, that this is becoming a tension spot now. Maybe becoming aware of that change that I need to make a little more, but then not having the rhythms, the patterns, the tools in your tool belt to be able to make that change, and just kind of having the attitude of, well, I'm going to try harder. Maybe I'm going to try this. Next time I get angry, I'm just going to walk away, or whatever. And for years, that not working. Trying to make this change of, I need to have a better way of controlling frustration, and just the kind of the stereotypical, well, I'll try harder, not working. And then when the pain of staying the same became greater than the pain of staying the same, is when my son was born, Milo, our oldest son. And then all of a sudden, if you've had a newborn, they are beautiful and wonderful, and they're God's gift.
Yeah.
But they can also just be the worst because they don't sleep. They they cry. And especially when you're a first-time parent, you have no idea. You're going to mess everything up and make everything 100 times worse.
Right.
And so it all of a sudden, like, wow, I don't have the patience to deal with my son as a newborn that literally can't do anything. This is not okay. I'm getting too frustrated that my son is upset because he's tired. This is ridiculous. So it kind of came to the point where, for me, making an emotional change, I had to get to a different place, I had to do something different.
And you also had
makes
to not
sense.
make an excuse
Yeah.
for it.
Yes. Yeah, you first kind of had to,
You had to say it was you.
No personal
this is
responsibility.
my
Yeah.
problem. It's not so-and-so's. It's not, my wife didn't let me
Milo
know
and
he
Sarah's
needed
problem.
a bottle.
He does need a
He
Bible.
does
actually. Raise them up
she
in the
didn't
way they
tell
should
me
go.
that he needed a bottle right now. So it's her fault. Oh, this is stupid. Everybody leave me alone. That's this, and then the other thing too that speaking to like today's culture is we've this idea of, well, it's, so-and-so's fault because, the people blame it on this trauma that happened or that trauma, and all that's well and good, and I don't want to invalidate that at all. But of all people, Will Smith said something that has stuck with me forever. We have to understand the difference between fault and responsibility. Like, something cannot be your fault, but it is going to be your responsibility to deal with the
good.
fallout of it.
That's really good.
So instead of blaming it on this situation or that situation, I have to understand that this is my problem to deal with, and it's a change that I need to make. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do something I haven't tried yet because everything I've done is not working. I feel like how many people try to do the same New Year's resolution over and over and over again each year, but try it the same exact way they tried it last year.
Right.
It's a wish.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to get a membership to Planet Fitness, and I'm going to start going every once in a while. You have no plan, you have no diet, you have nothing, and by this time in January, you're done already. All right, you got to try something different to have a
New.
different result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, to make a long story short, for me, that was actually talking about what I was feeling, which I was very uncomfortable with. Talking to a doctor, and lo and behold, my doctor was kind of like, "Yeah, I've been waiting for you to come in. I figured with your family history, you're probably going to come see me someday about this."
Wow.
And talking to a counselor and all this stuff. You have to get to the point where
And you're a different person.
I am. But, as Jessica, as you were saying, that didn't happen after one counseling session, and we can talk about emotions and counseling another time, but, it wasn't go to the counselor one time
Right.
and now all my problems are solved, which
Right.
I think so many people
People do.
have that. Well, I went and talked
That
to a
mindset.
counselor and it, didn't help. Well,
Yeah.
that's not how it works.
Yeah.
If it takes months and months and months to change just a physical habit of waking up early, how much longer is it going to take to make a change that's even more intangible than that?
Yeah. So good. There's
so
some
much
amazing handles in what you said, and I think it's so true that, like, we tend to make our goals about everything other than the things that matter most, what's going on in the soul, and those are the things that are often the hardest to make. Because, like you said, you have ingrained pathways in your brain, neurons. Then you have the gravitational pull of everything you've ever been formed by your upbringing. You have the gravitational pull of all the environment that you're currently in, of all your past experiences. And to break habits of the soul, habits of the mind, that nothing will change your life more than those, but nothing's harder than those. And I love that you brought self-awareness and responsibility onto the table. Also, just shout out, because I just got done reading a month ago Will Smith's first book, autobiography, called Will. It's amazing. So, a little shout out. But I love that quote. What about you?
I think, gosh, both of you guys just were so eloquent in talking about change. The one thing I will say, something I've been processing a lot, and we brought it up several times here, is that change oftentimes requires pain. And pain is one of the things that I think we're conditioned as humans to actively avoid.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, I've just been thinking a lot about this, almost like this paradox, like this pain paradox of, like, what if actually, instead of avoiding pain, if we leaned into our pain and leaned into those moments if maybe in those moments we couldn't uncover or discover the biggest change in our lives.
Well, it's really ironic
Yeah.
that that we avoid pain
Yeah.
and it gets us into the things that actually cause us the pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because people tell, like, I was actually reading someone's like status or something like that on
Yeah.
some platform, and she said something like, well, I'm not doing this in 2022 because in 2021 this did not serve me. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like, that is
Yeah.
the epitome of
Yeah.
our culture is like, well, if that doesn't serve me and that doesn't make me feel good and happy and butterflies about myself, no thanks.
Yep.
I'll
Right.
just pass it on to someone
Yeah.
else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's in those moments where we lean in, you know, if we can somehow get ourselves to a space where we say, hey, I'm going to lean in to my pain or embarrassment or whatever it is, that you can often find the greatest motivation to actually accomplish the change you're looking to accomplish. For example, you know, this is kind of embarrassing, but when I was first starting my career, you know, first big boy job, working as a pastor. I won't say what I made. It was not that much. But anyways, I went out and I had bought a car. And it was like kind of my first big boy purchase. It was I think it was a 2010 Dodge Journey. And it had all the bells and whistles, and it was so great and all the things. I loved it and started driving it. And then, you know how when you buy something, like especially when you buy it on credit, like the first payment isn't due for like, it's not like the first month after, but it's like the month after that or whatever. So, you know, the first 6 weeks I had the car, I didn't have a payment. And then the first payment shows up and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to pay that. I'll just pay it later. You know, and then you get a month behind and then you make a payment. And you're like, okay, I'll figure this thing out eventually. And before I knew it, I was 4 or 5 months into it. And one day I was sitting in this home, and I was in a home that the church had given me to live in, and I'm living right next to the church. And it's embarrassing, but I heard a knock on the door. And it was a guy, and he said, hey, is that your Dodge Journey out there? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you need to give me this X amount of money or I'm going to take it. And I was like, what? And it was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I somehow, I had like so many hours to figure out the money, and I somehow was able to figure it out and make it work. But that moment, you know, when you talk about having to take responsibility, is staring you, like it was staring me in the face. Like, this is something that I need to change and do in my life. And that started this whole process. I remember the next day, and there's something to be said for that. Like, if you're waiting on a change, sometimes I think we like to wait for all like the perfect, like, you know, we talked about waiting for the new year,
Stars to align.
Right.
stars to align and making
Yeah.
a change. No, it was the next day.
Wow.
I went to the library
Wow.
and I borrowed Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University book, read the whole book, and started working on creating the emergency fund.
Yeah.
And then we started budgeting like crazy. I mean, and we did it like old school envelope
Cash
system.
envelopes, yes.
Cash in the
I
envelopes.
definitely did that.
I remember going to Aldi, and we did not like eat at Aldi growing up. And my wife and I kind of joke about it now. She was like, "Let's go to Aldi," and I was like, "Ew, I don't want to go to Aldi and eat Aldi food." But she was like, "This is what we can do to afford it." And I remember we joke about it to this day. Every Sunday afternoon, it was Aldi hot dogs and mac and cheese, and that was our lunch. And that's what we had to do
Yeah.
to stay in our budget. And
That's painful.
it is. It is.
We used to have rice and beans because,
Yes.
like, yeah.
And that's what and that's what we had to do. We had to embrace that for that season, and it was annoying. You know, you have to go to it's like, all right, I'm gonna go to the bank and I'm gonna withdraw cash out every week and fill up those envelopes and do those things, and it wasn't instantaneous. But what's crazy is over time, those habits and those things kind of just ingrained themselves in me and in us.
And have you guys noticed too? Like, I think some of the encouraging thing is when you change in one area, it gives you like this intestinal resilience
Yeah.
and plan to change in another area.
Yeah.
I think like forever ago, Stephen Covey wrote the classic about the 7 habits of highly effective people, and he brought this whole thought of like a keystone habit. Sometimes that's the most powerful part. Maybe to simplify, if you do want to set something for the new year, just pick one area
Yeah.
and
It
say,
will spill over.
Yeah.
and it'll spill over.
It will.
This is so what I've been doing is you guys have been talking. This has been so good because I got areas, and I'm assuming everybody that's watching or listening has areas they want to change. I've been like extracting principles that you guys have given, and I got a few. So I want to here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 7 principles.
7 principles of change.
7 principles that you 3 have given me to help me change. Number 1 is make a decision. Like change is so chemically, physically, emotionally, just naturally tough. We especially the deeper and more permanent the change and the longer the issue has been there, there's going to have to be a decision. There's going to have to be like a line in the sand. And so make a decision. I heard somebody say recently, they said, this may sound really spiritual. They said that, but they said for them, they have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
They almost
Oh,
have
yeah.
to like declare, like, this, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to change this. So make a decision. I love that. Find your motivation. If it's just your own self-seeking ambition or glory or ease or convenient, that's probably not going to be a deep enough root to bear some real fruit. Like there's got to be like deep motivation. Show yourself grace. I love that. As a 3, I love that. I need that. I constantly feel like I'm on the. I don't know about y'all. I constantly feel like I'm in the balance of no, I'm too easy on myself, or I'm way too
Yes.
hard on myself.
Yeah.
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 I'm like that with right now we're in a fast. It's like you don't want to be legalistic, you don't want to be
Yeah.
loose.
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
like what is that balance of like? And part of probably maturing is being able to find the tension
in
and
that
dichotomy of that.
balance, yeah.
But show yourself grace, because if you don't, I have a friend in Georgia. She'll call and she's on the merry-go-round of dieting because she's like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to finally do it, and it's just crazy strict. And the moment she stops,
Burnout.
shame, and then shame just leads you right back into the thing
Yep.
that you know. So show yourself grace. I love that. Choose your pain. You didn't say it that way, but it's that whole thing of you're going to choose the pain of change or the change of staying the same.
Yeah.
So it's to really choose your pain.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say the other day, they said, hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, a hard life.
That's good.
Yeah.
And there's this old writer that once said, they said, the irony of this life is that those who choose the most discipline end up with the most freedom and the most joy.
Yeah.
So choose your pain. Self-awareness, super important. I heard you say this. I think this is so important, especially for our generation. Take
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yes.
Even if where I'm at is the result of not my choices, which most of my life is the result of my choices.
Yeah.
But even the parts that are not, that may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility to choose my future,
Yeah.
to choose what kind of life I'm going to create. And then I heard from you, lean into the pain.
Yeah.
Now, there is one ingredient that I've always considered essential to change that none of you 3 mentioned that I'm curious your thoughts on. And that's, do you feel like accountability has a place in this?
I think there has to be. I mean, at least for me, if you don't have something holding you accountable, or someone walking through the change with you, I think it's going to be really hard to actually see it through. And I think just when you look at the scriptures, even like the new, Christians in the New Testament, they would gather together and they would confess their sins to each other, and they would talk about the things that they were trying to work on and improve and do things like that. And I just think you have to have someone with you that you trust, someone with you that you can look up to. And sometimes it's not just a peer, but someone maybe who's gone before.
Yeah. Like a
And
mentor, a coach.
Like a mentor or coach. Like having that person who can
Speaking of which,
look up to you. Yeah.
you have your picture famously hang on the walls of Lifetime Fitness.
I
Did
do.
that have anything to do with a coach or mentor?
It did. I had someone who was with me at that time. I was paying for a personal trainer, and it made all the difference to have someone who'd work out with me, give me ideas on diet stuff or workout stuff, and he'd always, I played football growing up, and whenever you have someone who's working out with you, it's like you can always get that extra rep in when you're doing it. It's like you're struggling under the bar, and it's like, I just got to get this last rep of 250 up, and it's like, I just don't know if I can do it. But when you have that person who can get you there, like it makes all the difference in the world.
Just the other day, I benched 275. So
Dang.
no, I'm just
You did
kidding.
275.
That may not be true, but Jess is a CrossFit
She is a
inspiration.
machine.
It's true. Tell us about this about every day for the last year,
About 7 months.
for the last 7
That
months.
that has been a big drastic change that both Trey and I have made. I mean, like we both hit our threshold. We were both the heaviest that we've been, which, you know, nobody wants to be there. Like nobody wants to be like, this is the worst shape I've ever been in my whole entire life. And so we hit a wall, and we were like, all right, we got to do something. And we've had a gym in our garage for a while, because when we had little kids, when we dated, that we worked out together all the time. And then when you got married, it's like, oh, you just want to skip the gym and eat that ice cream sundae with me, please. And that was just because so when you brought up accountability, I'm like, it can be good. I mean, like, because I've with Trey, like with working out, or even it's just like, you want to not and just order pizza. Like, it's easy just because you get to do it together, and you're like, we're having more fun eating pizza than we would working out. But anyway, so I mean, we both hit that wall. We were like, because sometimes it's like he's like, I need to work out, and I'm like, no, I'm fine, or vice versa. But we had both got there, which helped with the accountability. And so like it takes him doing it first, like working out, because then I'm like, because I'm kind of competitive, and I'm like, well, I have to do that now. Like, you did that workout, so now I have to get out there and do that, like, so we can be even.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, we started working out, and it's been for about 7 months, and that's
the
most consistent I've ever been in my life with working out. And again, outside looking in can be like, that's so stupid.
Speaking of working out, I read a news article the other day. I love to read, and it's really good. All the news articles. It's kind of a joke. The reason why Pastor Russ just
Why did
exploded.
that get me so funny? I mean, I love it. It's not a big deal, but I do
just,
read a
like,
lot.
The reason why he
And pretty
exploded is
smart as
because-
well.
Yeah, he humble brag. That's what they say, right? They always joke because whenever there's breaking news happening, I'm always the first person to like.
You
send
are.
a-
You really are.
to
You
send
really
a news
are.
report.
And it's always in very news tone. It's always group
Breaking
text.
news, friends.
Yeah, 5 o'clock on 46th Street, 3 males. Okay, well, thank
What
you.
happened
Yeah.
in that story?
Right. I don't know.
Males,
I don't,
just males
So
happen.
there were
Prob-
males there.
probably violent.
Anyways, what I was going to say, I read an article about working out, and
you read a lot.
it said this, yes, that the one workout is the equivalent, studies are showing and doctors are showing, of taking one Prozac.
Oh yeah.
Which is
oh yeah.
nuts.
Well, we go to the chiropractor just like you do, and it's funny because, like, you know, we can go in with our ailments and just be like, like my, you know, digestive system's off, or blah blah blah, whatever it is. His answer to everything is always diet and exercise, and like you
His
think
stuff
he's
works,
you think
too.
you think he's lying, because you're like, everybody else tells me that, and like I've tried it and it doesn't work. And so like our stress levels had just, I mean, like that's just what happens. The older you get, you just have more responsibility. You're aware of more things.
Yeah.
Your stress just like ticks up over
Right.
time. And like we were literally like a ticking time bomb, Trey and I, with our stress levels just peaking, and we could tell it was coming out like in anger, or like taking it out on our kids, or just being like uptight, like always, you know, being tense. And so finally, like when we started exercising, we were like, oh, after about 4 months, we're like, that really does work.
Yeah.
Like I am not, and so like over the break, we've gotten kind of lax in working out, and it's just some anxiety, just like sitting right there. And it's like, it's ironic again, because working out's the last thing I want to do to help
Right.
my anxiety. But I
Right.
know if I
Do it.
do, then it's gonna.
Well, and you said something, you talked about, like, now that it's been like 7 months, even with the waking up, you're like, now it's not hard. Now you've been working out 7 months. And so, not to quote my own message, but I talked on Sunday, and, you know, I read a lot, and I work out a lot. and,
Yeah.
You know, make a lot of money, and it's
I'm
just,
glad that you said something. 'cause
for
I was
anybody,
gonna say
for anybody
something.
listening, these are all
Yes.
jokes. But Anyways, but Sunday I was talking about 5 or 6 years ago. I read a book by Gary Keller called One Thing, where he re-engages the whole concept of discipline, and his thought is most people you meet that you think are crazy disciplined, they just took one area of their life and
Yeah.
ingrained it until it became an unconscious habit they don't even think about now.
Yep.
And then they did that with another area of their life, and then you look in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by this person. And so for me, it's an encouragement because it's
Yeah.
like I can take one area of my life at
Yeah.
a time, and I can bring that into my normal existence.
Yeah, which I actually think that's often why I think we fail to change in the first place. Is like to use kind of the stereotypical New Year's thing of, oh, this is the year I'm going to get in shape and go to the gym. Well, if you go from a very sedentary lifestyle, which is what I have right now,
You've lost a lot of weight,
I have. And I can tell you about that if you want. I lose a lot of weight. It's kind of my thing.
Mr. Keto.
Look what I started. Look what I started.
It's just what I do.
We should probably
who I am, I
probably
mean.
just be quiet for everyone listening and just go home now.
But so
No,
anyway,
you have good
so
stuff.
it's kind of like that stereotypical. Okay, so let's say just your average person. You know, you don't work out a whole lot, don't eat that healthy. You know, eat fast food a couple of times a week, whatever. And then you decide January 1st, I am now not going to Starbucks to get a super sugary frappuccino. I'm gonna drink a greens smoothie, and then I'm gonna go to the gym after work, and I'm also gonna do this, and I'm gonna cut out sugar entirely. You're making a million changes all at the same time, and your habits have not created the footing to have that goal yet.
Wow, that's good.
To where, I guess statistically, like speaking to what that guy's point is, you can only make about one change successfully at a time.
Yeah.
Or one habit switch
At a
successfully and it actually stick.
Right.
Which I think is why in a couple weeks all the gyms are going to be empty again.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
changing so many things all at the same
We're
time.
going to get out of debt and get in shape. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all this stuff this year, and the reality is we can't focus on all that and keep a normal life going at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Well, yeah, and it really is crazy how long it takes
To change.
to change because like the waking up early, 10 years I wanted to wake up early, and now I finally do. And or like working out, ever since like I was done having kids, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start working out again, get my body back in shape or whatever. And what, my youngest is 6 now. It's taking me 6 years. I mean, like, well, I'll go in spurts, and I've tried a lot of different ways. Like, maybe I just need to have a rule of thumb that's not like working out, but moving my body.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it helps to have just like something more simple and toned down. I've just tried a lot of different things, but it takes
maybe
so
rhythms
much
are better than
time.
rules.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think that change, whether it's intentional and you like spark the change, or change is done to you, because that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Is like when change is actually when change is out of your control.
Yeah.
Either end of the spectrum, it takes so much time, because I can think of things that have changed in my life that I didn't have control over, and I spent years after that dramatic change that was done to me or I didn't have control over, processing and going through the traumatic experience or whatever, or coming around. That's the bulk of the time there. Like, it changes in an instant, all the time afterwards of counseling or therapy or medication or like processing or whatever, versus like change that you have to initiate. It takes so much on the front end.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what changes, it takes lots of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of time.
Yeah. And the longer you've been stuck and the deeper the hold, the more help you might need
Yeah.
outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I think that's really good. I think even thinking about like the book you referenced, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like, for me, I think maybe it's more effective if we were to just look at our habits. Like, what kind of habits can I establish that's going to lead to an eventual goal that I want to
Yeah,
have?
that's good.
You know what I mean? I have this goal of being in really good shape. Okay, let me look at my habits. All right, let me stop eating 3 donuts every time there's a donut around. Maybe I'll just eat one.
Yep.
Maybe
right.
I'll just eat one,
right.
And that sounds, oh, that's not a goal. Okay, but you're realistically aimed at and putting some footers down to actually reach where you're trying to go, as opposed to, well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to skip all these steps and I'm just going to start working out 17 times a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm never going to eat sugar ever again, and I'm
Yeah.
going to drink a gallon of water. Like,
Definitely
Let's-
setting yourself up
let's
for
m-
failure.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I read because I read a lot. There's a book. There's a book.
That's already been used.
There's a book by Andy Stanley called Visioneering, and he has several chapters where he redefines what success is, and he says, for instance, like success is not graduating college. That's a mile marker. Success is I study every day. Success is not the marriage. Success is so he does this. He said because if you don't do that, then you get really discouraged by delayed achievement of whatever you consider success.
Yeah.
But if success for you is I'm doing these habits every day,
Yeah.
then the mile marker is awesome, but that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like that Robert Louis Stevenson quote: "Don't judge each day by the harvest tree, but by the seeds that you plant." If I can just say, "Today I plant good seeds. Today I build good habits. Today I make good decisions," and so this has been helpful for me.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. This gives me principles to change, and I just want to encourage anybody. Maybe you want to write us in because I think one of the most discouraging things is, I know at least for me, is when I've tried to change for a long time and I haven't.
Yeah.
So I encourage anybody, if you feel like that, you're like, you almost lose hope eventually.
Yeah.
But I just want to remind everybody, it may sound cliche, but you can change. A.W. Tozer, he's this old theologian. He said the hope of men and women is they can change. That's the hope. On a spiritual level, that's the gospel, is that tigers really can change their stripes and that we really can change. And for me, on a kind of a spiritual but also psychological level, what helps me is the posture I'm coming from to change. Paul said in Corinthians, if anyone's in Jesus, they're literally a new creation. It's because, for me, psychologically, it helps me to realize I've already been changed. I've already received change. I already have everything in me, empower me to change, that from that place, with the wind at my back, so to speak, God's grace on my life, I can change. I like how Paul said, I worked harder than the rest of you, yet not I, but the grace of God. It takes both me partnering to make decisions and habits, but also receiving grace from God and from myself, I think, to actually fully step into a sustainable rhythm of change. So I'm just going to say it and declare it. I can change. The areas of my life that I have failed at for a long time, I can change.
That's good.
And if you're watching this, you're listening to this, you can change.
That's good.
And we'd love to be champions and cheerleaders in your corner. Maybe you want to write us in and let us know, hey, how can we partner and pray or support you or send resources to help you change. And maybe if you do have something for this year, whether it's a resolution or just a goal, let us know how we can cheer you on. But I'm believing. I saw somebody say the number one thing that they took a poll that people are feeling towards 2022, which is kind of surprised me, is hopeful. And I want to remain hopeful. And
Yeah.
I think we have every reason to remain hopeful.
I read a book about hope
You
once.
said it. I was going to say it.
You know,
Available on Amazon.
available on Amazon. Hope for the ones who cares. All right, we love you, and we will see you next week. If you haven't already, check out Inspired Podcast. Where can
Yep.
they find you?
On all the platforms.
On all the platforms.
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Anchor. No, I don't
No.
know. What is it called? I don't know.
I think that's where it's hosted. So
Which
Oh,
we
where
may
it's
we
hosted.
may be Anchor soon too. Who knows?
who knows?
We'll catch up with you guys.
What are we talking about?
I don't
Anyways,
know.
we love you. Check out Inspired Podcast and write us in. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. Give us a review. As always, we love when you rate, review, subscribe, share this with anybody you think it could help you. It means the world to us when you help us get the word out. Until then, we will see you next week.